Time now for Inside Utah Politics.
Well, thanks for joining us. I am Lindsay. Let's go inside Utah politics. We've just about hit the deadline for the Utah GOP to turn in signatures to put a repeal of Prop 4 on the ballot. It's a tall task, requiring signatures from 8% of active voters in 26 of the state's 29 Senate districts. If they can do it, though, it would set the stage for a push to end the years-long battle over redistricting on their terms. Now, I spoke to Utah GOP Chairman Rob Axson, and he thinks they're poised to pull it off. GOP Chairman Rob Axson, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to be with you.
This is a monstrous repeal effort. It's the talk of the town in Utah politics. How are you feeling about your chances?
Well, I'll tell you, I love being involved in this process because I believe in representative government and I believe in going about the system that we have. And here in Utah, the only path we have to engage on initiatives and to change them is to go through an initiative process. So it certainly is a high bar to cross. We're doing everything we can to engage and to meet that threshold. We're going to work clear to the finish line.
So how confident are you that this is going to pass?
I'm confident we have very broad support across the state. We have really good numbers. As you know, you have to hit certain thresholds statewide as well as certain thresholds across the state in each of the respective Senate districts. And so that becomes a logistical challenge as well. So anybody involved in initiatives in the past, they can tell you what I'm telling you now. It's a heavy lift. But it's one that should be a heavy lift, and we're going about that. I'm confident that we are going to have a very strong showing, and like I said, we're running to the finish line and encourage anybody who has yet to sign, they still have an opportunity to do so. They can actually go to ufrg.org/calendar and find locations in their area where they can go and sign right now.
As of late last week, you had still about 70,000 signatures valid signatures to gather, or to at least turn in, and you still needed about 22 of the 26 Senate districts. How do you plan to get those numbers?
Yeah, so we've been going about the whole state, and so you're tackling it all at the same time. It's not like you tackle one and then move to the next. And so when you have certain thresholds that are met and districts that are accomplished, it doesn't mean that, oh, now we're starting somewhere else. They're all moving steady. And the other thing that you need to realize is the LG's website, where it lists the validated rate and the signature validations. There's a lag. There's a multi-week lag generally because you turn them in initiatives to the clerks. The clerks then have 3 weeks to go through validating, and then they report it up to the LG's office. So there's definitely a lag, plus we've been going strong. We're continuing to get hundreds and hundreds of signatures every day, oftentimes thousands of signatures every day, and we're turning those in.
So do you believe you've turned in enough signatures to be validated?
I believe that we have turned in enough signatures to be validated statewide, absolutely.
To meet your threshold?
Our threshold should be met already statewide. What we're doing now is making sure that we have all of those different requirements on the respective Senate districts met. And again, we're trying to get signatures everywhere, especially along the Wasatch Front, because that's where the vast majority of the Senate districts are, is right here where our people are.
Yeah, so it's going to be a distribution issue for you. You're confident you can meet the 141-ish thousand signatures you need, but it's the 22 Senate districts.
Yeah, that's the piece that you don't take anything for granted, and you work clear to the finish line to make sure that you have that distribution done correctly. And again, we're trying to get as many signatures. So anybody who has thought, hey, I need to do this, if you haven't done it yet, I'll stress again, go out, do it right now, go and make sure that you add your name to put this on the ballot. Ultimately, that's what we're doing here, is we're giving this back to the people of Utah. We're not deciding policy with this. This is just qualifying for the ballot. It then is important for the people of Utah over the course of this year. They get to weigh in on this issue. They get to think about it. They get to sit with it. And then in November, they'll decide. And they can vote the way that they want to vote, and we'll all abide by whatever outcome comes there. But to anybody who's thinking, I don't know where I stand, I would still encourage them, put it on the ballot. And in fact, Governor Cox made that same encouragement earlier this week when he sent out an email to all of his distribution list, encouraging them to sign, to join him in signing, because he thinks it's the appropriate policy. But he also said to those that are being encouraged to not sign or to remove their name, don't do that. Like, leave it on there. This is the process. The process is we put things before the people of Utah, either through initiative or through their elected representatives. Don't be afraid of the debate. Let's engage in the debate. To do that, we need to get it on the ballot.
There has been a repeal campaign to come in and try to pull some of those signatures off. Obviously, you know, the GOP is kind of going up against the groups who want Prop 4 to stand. They don't even want to see it on the ballot. What do you make of those repeal efforts?
It's not surprising, though I do find it unfortunate. These are groups that have made their entire persona be one based off of listening to the people and engaging with the people and giving it to the people to decide. And so to then spend millions of dollars, which is what they're doing right now, literally millions of dollars, engaged in preventing the people of Utah from having their voice heard or even discussing the issue, I find to be incredibly hypocritical.
Well, what do you say to the people who say we already decided this issue, we passed it on the ballot?
Easy answer. In 2018,
50.3%, I get it.
50.24%.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Roughly 7,000 votes out of well over 1 million votes. But here's the critical thing. In 2018, there was this assumption of what they were going to do. There were intentions, and we can all have good intentions. Now we're seeing the actual implementation rather than just the intentions. In 2018, the people of Utah were asked to decide, do they want a recommending independent redistricting commission? Well, we've all seen the implementation of this, and decisions of the court have turned that from a commission that is no longer recommending to creating binding policy and ignoring the legislature. That's a very different question than the people of Utah were asked back in 2018. I think it's all the more appropriate to ask them again, seeing what you see now, do you still want it? And if the people of Utah decide, yep, we still want it, I can live with that.
It's your interpretation that the question is binding and that initiatives can't ever be touched, because what the Supreme Court ruling actually said was that you can change initiatives so long as you don't impair the reform. And I understand the arguments around that. Who makes the decision of whether the reform is impaired? I hear that, but it's sort of a misnomer, is it not, to say that initiatives can't be touched and they've created this super law?
Not at all. And here's why I'll say that. That issue has not been fully adjudicated. It's still in the court process. So we don't even have a final answer, and yet there is a degree of hubris coming from the courts right now saying you have to abide as though we fully adjudicated this, even though you're still on appeal. That's not normally the way that you should do things. That's not normally the way you do things here in this country. You wait until you have the final answer. The other piece that I think is important, in this most recent court decision by Judge Gibson, she threw out Map C that was passed by the state legislature. She said it didn't abide by what she expected. Okay, that's fine. She can make that argument. The appropriate thing would have been to give back to the legislature new marching orders. Go back and redo
Right, but how many times do you do that before you're sitting on an election with no map?
If the Constitution requires the legislature to be the ones who draft the maps, then you should do it however many times necessary to do that. Instead,
we could be sitting on an illegal map, unconstitutional map forever.
Well,
if the legislature never followed Prop 4.
Wholeheartedly disagree. Do you think that they would do that? They already had met and abided by her demands.
I'm not impugning their character. I'm just saying it's the reality that they could do.
I don't think we need to worry about the hypothetical because we have the reality of what we can talk about. Here's the reality. Judge Gibson selected a map that never stood before the people of Utah. It never went before our elected representatives. We never had an opportunity as citizens to weigh in on that. She didn't even abide by Proposition 4 requirements. She picked a map that came from a private organization. You would be up in arms, and I would too, if the Republican Party was the one who got to pick the maps. That wouldn't be appropriate. What's the difference between the Republican Party, a private organization, picking the maps, and the League of Women Voters and Mormon Women for Ethical Government? There's one big difference. I represent 1 million Utahns. They represent a handful.
Well, they see it as a legal remedy to when the legislature violated Prop 4.
Article 9 of the state constitution says the sole authority of drafting maps is held by the legislature. Pull it up and we can look at it. I'm not giving it verbatim.
We're arguing semantics, yes.
But it says that authority is there. It's not resting anywhere else.
But that's
it doesn't
what was
rest with the
argued
plaintiff.
In court. That was what was argued in court. Does the legislature have the sole authority? And
this piece was not weighed. Nobody before the deadline, November 10th, that Judge Gibson came in at 11:41 at night. Nobody anticipated that she was going to completely ignore the legislative maps. Nobody did. I'm talking to people who disagree with me on this whole issue, people who agree with me. Everybody assumed that, well, of course, the Constitution requires she's going to pick something that came from the legislature or give them requirements to make amendments. The fact that she went with something else, I think, shocked most people. Kudos to the plaintiffs. They succeeded at that stage of the legal process, but I think it was to the detriment of the state of Utah. We either have rules that we abide by or we don't. If we are comfortable ignoring the Constitution on this issue because it serves our interests, where do you draw a line? For me, I believe that the Constitution has to be adhered to, and sometimes you prevail on the issue you care about, and sometimes you don't, but we at least abide by that fair playing book that the Constitution lays out.
We have to leave it there, but just give me a one-word answer. Are you sitting on tens of thousands of signatures you have yet to turn in?
We have thousands of signatures that we have been turning in each and every day. We've been gathering thousands and thousands more. We certainly have quite a few that will be turned in over the course of this last little window of time that we have. And we're still gathering thousands of signatures, so there are many more coming.
Is it a strategy to not turn in right away?
No, honestly, it's less a strategy and more just the complexity of compliance that the code requires when you're doing an initiative process. There's a lot of steps that you have to do administratively before you can even turn them in. And so it really is just more logistics than it is strategy. But there are a lot of signatures still coming. You'll see a lot more being added to those totals.
We'll leave it there. Chair Rob Axson of the GOP party. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate it.
You bet. Well, thanks again to the GOP chair, Rob Axson. Now, at the time of this recording, we do not have access to the totals from signature packets that they've turned in, but as soon as we have those, we'll give you updates on our website, abc4.com. All right, still ahead here on Inside Utah Politics, Representative Paul Cutler joins the show to tackle chances that the signature gathering process and Utah elections as a whole get a revamp. Stay tuned.
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Representative Paul Cutler, thanks for joining me today.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Lindsay.
Oh, I appreciate your time today. Okay, let's dive into a House proposal that's kind of making some waves here on Utah's Capitol Hill. And this one mails out everybody's ballot but requires you to return it in person with ID. How do you feel about this proposal?
There's a lot of elections bills that are out there. And in the Government Operations Committee, we go through a process of looking at all the elections bills and trying to figure out what should our policy be and how do we narrow that down to something that works both logistically and from a policy perspective. So this new bill by our chairman, Jefferson Burton, makes some proposals. If you look at what happened last year, we came out with a vote by mail bill. There was negotiations with the Senate. It changed the bill. It made it much more workable. I expect the same thing this time. It comes out and asks people to return their ballot and show ID when they return it. There's negotiations happening with the Senate on how do we make this work logistically, how much is it going to cost, how much is it going to inconvenience people, how do we balance security with logistics and encouraging more people to vote. I think when more people are involved, then we make better decisions, but we also need to make sure our elections are safe and secure.
So do you think we can actually get there on this bill? Because when I talk to the county clerks, they tell me they're not even willing to work with the House because this is so far beyond what they could actually implement. It's got a $10 million fiscal note. Is there any middle ground here?
There's lots of room. And my experience is the county clerks are happy to come to the table and talk about how do we improve both the security of our elections and also the logistics, because they have to administer it, they have to pull it off. And we've got a lot of people out there, and and it takes a lot to make sure they can vote safely and securely.
Do you support this proposal as is, that right now it would, require people to staff these ballot boxes and people to take their ballots in person and show ID?
I think it's challenging. I'm waiting to hear the presentation. I'm waiting to hear what happens with the negotiations with the Senate. And after we hear that, then I'll make a decision. I think it's preliminary. The bill's still in rules. It's still very early in the process that we're evaluating.
So you're undecided at this point. You just need to wait and see.
I am. Utahns love vote by mail. Mm-hmm. It's a great, and they especially love getting their ballots, looking down, researching who the candidates are. They also, most people believe that people should be willing to show ID, and there are concerns about who's voting in the elections. So we need to find good ways to ensure the security of our elections. Now, in the past, with the vote by mail bill last year, we were able to come to some compromises and find a way forward that I thought was very good compromise. I expect the same process this time. General Burton is a great lawmaker. He listens, he weighs the pros and cons, and I have a lot of confidence in him that we can come up with a better solution. And if we can't, it won't pass.
Well, and that bill stripped out this provision because you couldn't get to consensus on it. But what do you want to say to those folks who feel like, again, the perception that Republicans are making it harder to vote?
I don't think that's across the board. People want secure, responsible, well-organized, well-run elections, period. And the Republican Party wants that. We want more people to join the Republican Party, to embrace conservative values, and that's the goal. And we want our elections to be secure and people not to question them.
Let's switch to some bills you're running.
Yes.
You've got a tweak to initiatives and referendum process as we gather signatures out there. We're in the middle. We just talked to Rob Axson of the Republican Party. We're in the middle of a big campaign to do that. Talk to me about what your bill does specifically.
So my bill is HB 32, running it on behalf of the interim Government Operations Committee. And we studied all the complaints that we've seen about the signature gathering process over the years. And it's interesting because, traditionally some members of my party were very opposed to signature gathering. Now with the Prop 4 repeal, they're on the other side, and it's very different when you're on the other side. You realize, oh, there are some problems.
It's really hard.
Yeah, there's some things that need to be tweaked and fixed. So it does a number of things. First, it requires training for all signature gatherers. The Lieutenant Governor's office has already created this training online. It only takes a few minutes to view. It explains what a signature gatherer can say, what they can't say, what they're legally obligated to do. Everybody agrees, hey, it's better when people gathering signatures get a little bit of training and guidance. So everyone's in agreement with that. Second, it adds a notification element. So some have said, well, we should just post everybody's name who signs an initiative or a petition online, that way everyone can see it. This takes a different approach that protects privacy of individuals. So when you sign a petition or an initiative, if the Lieutenant Governor's office or if your number, your mobile phone number or your email is on the voter rolls, then starting next year when we upgrade our IT system, you'll get a text or an email that says, hey, the county clerk has verified your signature for this petition or for this initiative.
Sorry, when you say petition, you mean as a candidate trying to get on the ballot?
All of the above.
Okay.
So a candidate trying to get on the ballot, a initiative petition for a new law, or a referendum to repeal a law.
Okay.
All of those, same process. We're
Okay.
trying to make it similar. So you would get a text message or an email saying, the clerk has verified your signature, and if it's an initiative or a petition, you would also get a link to that, to what you signed, and instructions. If you didn't agree with what you signed, then you could research that and find a way to take your name off that. So everyone agrees that's an improvement.
Yeah.
It also improves. Right now, the packet that a signature gatherer carries around, you're supposed to include the full text of law, which can be many, many pages. These packets are huge. We're cutting down all sorts of trees to print these packets. So the new proposal says, we're going to have a QR code on the page. You can just scan that QR code and look at the law yourself. You don't have to have the full text, however many pages of law there. And it does a number of other things to improve the process. It'll cut down on the size of these packets, make it more efficient for everyone.
Yeah, it's so interesting, and you alluded to this, where Republicans have consistently made these criteria for initiatives harder and harder and harder, but now you're saying, well, now that we're on the other side, we have a little bit of more incentive to make this a little bit easier. I mean, is that what's happening here?
Well, we started this before the Prop 4 repeal. We started this in the summer interim, saying there are complaints, there are ways to improve the efficiency of the signature gathering and verification process. So this started before then, but it's always interesting when the shoe's on the other foot, how your perspective changes.
Yeah, and making initiatives hard is something, that, to create a new law is hard in the legislature. You got to get it through 104 people and, a governor, and yeah, there's a lot to that too. So having those processes be somewhat equal, you can see the value in that. So do you see this as making the process better?
Right. It's going to improve the process, get people more correct information earlier, improve, if you're a signature gatherer, it's going to improve the experience for you too. We also have some improvements to electronic signature gatherings that I support that will make it better. We can verify if you're a member of the party right on the spot. That'll really improve things and cut down on the work for our county clerks.
So just in our final minute here, how do you want people, what do you make of kind of the back and forth that there's been some nefarious nature, whether it's in the gatherers who have been assaulted or the gatherers who may be lying to folks? What do you want people to take from what your bill will fix?
That we're trying to, the takeaway is, let's get people access to correct information. Let's train people to know what they can say, what they can't say, what the law is, and make the process smoother for everyone. When people have good information, they can make better decisions.
Good advice there, Representative Paul Cutler. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Well, coming up here still on Inside Utah Politics, could Utah cut the income tax for a 6th year in a row? What would it take to get the job done in this week's Capitol Hill Highlights?
You're watching Inside Utah Politics.
Well, Utah's latest effort to regulate public sector labor unions may die on the vine. The Senate Revenue and Tax Committee this week voted against recommending SB 249 for a floor vote. Now, this would have established a state-level labor relations board, as well as establishing in the state law the rights of union workers, unions, and state labor disputes. Now, while some union members supported the bill, some expressed concerns that more union activity could run up budgets for cities and towns.
What this bill allows is a structure for us to handle disputes in a way that meets best practices and procedures that are acceptable to both employers and public employees. So this really is a win-win.
We've heard some initial concerns about the impacts of more public unions and what that fiscal implication looks like, particularly in a year where there's a lot of conversations about limitations on property tax increases.
The bill failed to advance out of a committee, with the sole yes vote coming from Democrat Senate Minority Leader Luz Escamilla. We'll have to see if the sponsor comes back with any changes. Utah's Senate has passed a plan to cut the state's income tax by 0.05%. Now, estimates say this will save the average Utah family about $45 per year. Republicans argue that those modest tax cuts add up over time, while Democrats pushed back on the need when there are other state issues that money, they say, could fund.
We have a ton of people moving into the state of Utah, and they're still moving here. So I don't think this is going to benefit the most of us to the point that it's going to benefit the few.
I feel like a moderate cut like this is something we ought to continue to be pushing, to continue our competitiveness, and also to celebrate our abundance and share it with our taxpayers.
The proposal still needs to pass the House before heading to the governor's desk, but if it does get his signature, it would represent the 6th year in a row that Utah has cut income taxes. Well, now to Italy, where conversations with Governor Spencer Cox about the upcoming 2034 Winter Games in Utah steered into the political tension between the president and a U.S. Olympic skier. Now, to set the stage here, U.S. Olympic skier Hunter Hess said that he had mixed emotions about representing America, saying that he was doing it for his friends and family. President Trump responded on Truth Social, calling Hess a, quote, big loser. Now, he added that it's very hard to root for someone like this. Now, when asked to weigh in on the exchange, Governor Spencer Cox said he thinks the media has a hand in stirring the pot.
I know the media loves this stuff. It gets a lot of clicks. I hate the questions you ask the athletes. These are kids out there competing. I think you should be asking them about their sports and about their competition, and let the politics take care of the politics.
Reporters also questioned the governor about the welcoming nature of America and whether that's changed. Governor Cox invited them to visit the U.S., saying America is a very welcoming country. Well, that does it for today's Inside Utah Politics. If you want to get a hold of us on social media, make sure you stay in touch with us. We are on Instagram, Threads, X. Just search for Lindsay On Air. You can also find us in podcast form. Wherever you get your podcast, just search for Inside Utah Politics with Lindsay Aerts. And if you're looking for more national political coverage, check out our Political Power Ranker, our Next Star National Political Director and the head of Emerson College Polling. Look at who's up and who's down in the world of politics based on the data. We carry that for you and much more IUP on our free streaming app, News for Utah Plus. You can download that on Amazon Fire, Roku, Apple TV, and some Samsung devices. Well, thanks for joining us this week. We will see you next week.